Welcome back to my channel. This channel specializes in writing about epic tales and myths from around the world. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to help me out. Today, we will dive into a story titled King Arthur, The Last Journey to Avalon. The once and future king. Epic myth retelling. Here is the detailed content. Chapter 1. The Birth of the Hidden King. In the age before kings, when Britain was a land of mist and blood, the world trembled between chaos and light. The Roman legions had long departed, leaving behind a broken island, a realm of scattered tribes and warring lords. Across the moors and shadowed forests, old gods whispered, druids dreamed, and the land hungered for a ruler who could bind its soul again. It was in this time of despair that a prophecy was spoken, not by mortal tongues, but through the murmurs of destiny itself. When the wolf devours the crown and the dragon sleeps beneath the hill, a child shall rise, a king born of storm and sorrow, chosen by fate to unite the land. The prophet was Merlin, half man, half mystery, servant to no crown and bound to the weavings of time. He foresaw the coming of one whose reign would bring both glory and ruin. In the dark days of Uther Pendragon, a mighty but reckless warlord, Merlin appeared like a shadow from mist. He spoke of unity, of peace beyond conquest, yet his words fell upon ears deafened by pride. Uther burned for a woman not his own, Igraine, wife of Duke Gorloy of Cornwall. His desire ignited war. Through magic and deceit, Merlin cloaked Uther in the duke's likeness, and from that union, Arthur was conceived, a child born not of lust alone, but of destiny's cruel design. When the babe first cried, thunder rolled across Tintagel's cliffs. Merlin came that night, his staff shimmering with runes of old. He must be hidden, said the seer, his voice echoing beyond the mortal veil, for he is marked by both light and shadow. Until the time is right, none must know his name. Thus, under a blood-red dawn, the infant was carried away, not by soldiers or servants, but by fate itself. He was entrusted to Sir Ector, a noble man of honor, who raised the boy as his own among green fields and humble halls. None knew his heritage. He was simply Arthur, a boy with kind eyes and a courage that burned quietly, like embers waiting for the wind. Years passed, and the world forgot the child of prophecy. Uther Pendragon, consumed by guilt and war, fell ill. As his breath waned, Britain fractured again, lord against lord, sword against sword. Before his death, Uther entrusted to Merlin a secret no one yet understood. When the king died, a great storm covered the sky. Lightning struck the heart of London, and there appeared a stone, ancient and cold, with a sword buried deep within. Upon it, words shimmered in silver runes. Whoso pulleth this sword from this stone is rightwise born king of all Britain. For years, the sword stood untouched, gleaming like a beacon amid despair. Many knights tried boasting of their lineage and strength, yet none could stir the blade. The land remained divided, and hope waned like dying firelight. Meanwhile, Arthur grew into manhood beneath Sir Ector's roof, alongside his foster brother, Sir Kay, proud and fiery of heart. Arthur, though humble, possessed a grace that no training could teach. He listened to the wind, spoke kindly to beasts, and dreamed of unity, though he knew not why. In the boy's eyes, Merlin saw the reflection of destiny awakening. One fateful morning, a great tournament was called in London, a contest of might and honor. Kay was to fight, but in the rush, he forgot his sword. "Arthur," he cried, "ride back and fetch it for me." The boy obeyed, loyal as ever. But when he found the house locked, his gaze drifted to the churchyard, where the sword in the stone stood alone in morning mist. Without thought, without pride, he stepped forward. His hands touched the hilt, warm as if it knew him. The world fell silent. The birds paused. The mist swirled like spirits holding their breath. And then, with no struggle at all, Arthur drew the sword free. A burst of light pierced the clouds. The bells of London rang of their own accord. Those who saw it fell to their knees, for they felt something more than wonder. They felt destiny. When Sir Ector saw the sword, he knelt before Arthur, tears in his eyes. "My son," he whispered, "thou art no son of mine, but something greater. The blood of kings runs in thee." Arthur wept, for he had loved his foster father dearly. But within his heart a flame ignited, not of pride, but of calling. Merlin appeared from the mist, his eyes glimmering with ageless sorrow. "Now begins the age of kings," he said softly. "But remember, young Arthur, every crown is forged with pain. Britain's glory will be your gift, and her ruin your curse." The boy looked upon the sword. Its steel gleamed with both promise and peril. He knelt in silence, knowing his life no longer belonged to him, but to the land. Around them, the air shimmered with unseen spirits. Far in the hills, the old gods stirred, whispering the name that would echo through centuries: Arthur, the once and future king. And as dawn broke over the misty isle, the hidden child of prophecy stood revealed. The earth itself seemed to breathe again. The king had been born. Chapter 2: The Sword in the Stone. When Arthur drew the sword from the stone, the world trembled, not with thunder, but with awakening. Yet now, in a single moment of grace, the winds changed their song. But destiny does not reveal itself without doubt. The nobles of Britain gathered in the square of London, beneath a grey winter sky. There stood the anointed sword, now free of the stone, gleaming with cold light. The people murmured, the priests prayed, and the barons argued. "How can this boy, this squire, be our king?" cried one. "He is but a child of no name, a bastard of the lowborn," said another. Yet the sword in Arthur's hand shone with an inner fire, and none could deny the truth written upon the air. To end their quarrel, Merlin the enchanter stepped forth, staff in hand, cloak rippling like smoke. His voice carried with it the echo of mountains. "Let the boy prove himself before heaven and men alike," he said. "For fate is not decided by blood, but by the hand that destiny guides." So it was agreed. The sword was thrust again into the stone, and each noble knight, proud, armored, mighty, came forth to claim the crown. One by one they tried, their faces red with strain. The sword did not move. When Arthur's turn came, he stepped forth humbly. His hands trembled, not with ambition, but with quiet reverence. He knelt before the stone, whispered a prayer no one heard, and touched the hilt. Once again, light broke from heaven. The blade slid free, like a sigh of relief. The watching crowd fell silent, for they knew, deep within their hearts, that they had witnessed the will of something far greater than man. From that day forth, Arthur Pendragon was hailed King of Britain. The coronation. The crowning was held at the Cathedral of Camelot. Bells rang across the land, echoing through the valleys and into the sea. Peasants cheered, though many lords refused to kneel. Some whispered rebellion, others plotted in silence. Yet Among the common folk, hope bloomed again. When the golden crown was placed upon Arthur's brow, Merlin spoke softly into his ear. "The sword you wield is not merely a weapon, my king. It is a promise. Guard it, for it binds you to this land, as flesh binds to soul." Arthur raised the sword high. The hall filled with light, and for the first time in 100 years, peace touched Britain's heart. The battle's for the throne, but peace is a fragile thing. Not all would bow to a boy crowned by a miracle. Across the hills, 11 kings rose against him, claiming they alone bore the blood of rule. Arthur, though young, met them not with arrogance, but with courage. Under Merlin's guidance, he called upon loyal knights and farmers alike. They came not for gold, but for belief, for something in Arthur's eyes made men dream of unity once more. At dawn, the armies met upon the plain of Bedegren. The morning fog curled low, hiding the faces of the fallen yet to be. Arthur rode at the front, the sword in his hand gleaming like starlight. He raised it high and cried, "For Britain, for peace, for the dream that will outlive us all." The two sides clashed like thunder. Spears shattered, horses screamed, and the air turned red with the breath of war. Arthur fought like one possessed, not by rage, but by destiny. The sword's edge never dulled. Each stroke seemed guided by unseen will. When the battle ended, the 11 kings lay defeated, their banners trampled into mud. The boy who had drawn the sword from the stone now stood as the rightful ruler, not by divine gift alone, but by his own valor and mercy, the birth of Excalibur. Yet the sword from the stone, though mighty, was not eternal. In a later battle, it shattered beneath the strike of a pagan king's axe. The blade splintered, and Arthur fell to his knees, despair clouding his heart. Merlin appeared beside him, calm as ever. "Do not grieve for what is lost," said the mage, "for that was but a symbol of your birth. The true sword, the one bound to your soul, awaits beneath the water Esmere." He led Arthur through mist and forest until they reached a lake still as glass. From its heart rose a hand clad in silver, holding aloft a blade unlike any other, its hilt wrapped in gold, its edge gleaming with eternal light. "This," said Merlin, "is Excalibur, the sword of kings and of fate. It shall defend you while you defend the truth. But know this, its power will fade if your heart strays from honor." Arthur took the sword from the lady's hand, feeling its weight, not of steel, but of destiny renewed. The oath of the Round Table, the foreshadow. Returning to Caerleon, Arthur gathered knights from all corners of the realm. He saw in them the makings of something greater than conquest, a fellowship born of equality and virtue. "We shall sit at a round table," Arthur declared, "where no man is greater than another, and no heart shall stand above justice." And so the Round Table was born, not merely of wood, but of belief. Merlin watched from afar, the wind tugging at his robes. He knew what Arthur could not yet see, that every golden age casts the shadow of its own end. As night fell over Camelot, the king stood upon the balcony, gazing into the mist beyond the hills. In the sword's reflection, he saw not his face, but the faces of those yet to come, knights, queens, traitors, and ghosts. And somewhere, faint and eternal, the voice of destiny whispered through the stars, "You were born to heal the land, Arthur Pendragon. Yet one day you shall break it. Such is the burden of kings." Chapter 3. The Rise of Camelot. The land was weary of blood. For generations, the soil had known nothing but war and ashes, and the cries of widows haunted every valley. Yet, when Arthur Pendragon ascended the throne, hope began to stir timidly at first, like a flower beneath frost. The boy who had drawn the sword from the stone was now a man, a king forged by battle and bound by vision. He dreamed not of conquest, but of unity. A realm where might serves right, he said, and where every man, high or low, may live under one law. So began the building of Camelot, the shining kingdom, the dream forged in stone upon the banks of the river where the mists of Avalon met the mortal world. Arthur ordered a great citadel to be raised, not as a fortress, but as a beacon. Stone by stone, tower by tower, Camelot rose toward the heavens, its white walls gleaming like moonlight over green hills. Banners of gold and crimson fluttered from its turrets. Bells sang at dawn and twilight. People from every corner of Britain came, masons, blacksmiths, scholars, healers, all drawn by the same dream that a just king might end the age of chaos. When the last stone was laid, Merlin stood beside Arthur at the gates. "You have built not a castle, but a promise," the old mage said. "Yet promises are mortal, my king. They live only as long as hearts believe in them." Arthur nodded, knowing the truth in those words. For Camelot was not born from power, but from faith, the gathering of the knights. To guard that faith, Arthur sought men of virtue, those who would fight not for glory, but for justice. From every land they came, noble, brave, flawed, and true. Sir Lancelot of the Lake, unmatched in valor and grace. Sir Gawain, fierce as the sun. Sir Percival, pure of heart. Sir Galahad, who would one day surpass them all. Together they forged the brotherhood of the Round Table. The table itself, carved from the heart of an ancient oak, was made round so that no man might claim the seat of honor above another. On its surface, their names were inscribed in silver, each one bound by oath to seek justice, to protect the weak, to speak truth, and to never abandon mercy so long as life endures. When they swore the vow, the hall filled with a light unseen. It was said the air shimmered like the breath of angels, and that the very stones of Camelot remembered the sound. The Queen of Light, but even kings are not immune to the touch of destiny. One spring morning, Arthur journeyed to the northern border to settle a dispute among lords. There, in a chapel of wildflowers, he met Guinevere, daughter of a noble house, radiant as dawn. Her eyes, deep as still water, held both wisdom and sorrow. Arthur, though king, felt humbled before her. "You are the heart of the dream I seek to build," he told her. And in time, she became his queen. Their marriage was celebrated with song and feast. Yet, as Merlin watched the young queen kneel beside her king, he felt a chill in his ancient bones. For he saw the shadow of another Lancelot, the knight who would one day love her beyond honor. Destiny's web had already begun to tighten. The golden age years of peace followed. Under Arthur's rule, justice flowered. The highways were safe. Thieves fled to the forests, and the poor were fed. The bards sang of Camelot as the heart of the world, where truth sat enthroned beside love. In the great hall, laughter echoed with the clatter of goblets and the glow of hearthfire. The knights rode on quests across the realm, rescuing maidens, slaying beasts, righting wrongs. Each victory became legend, each legend a prayer. It seemed for a time that heaven itself had blessed Britain. The people called Arthur the dragon's son, chosen of the gods. But beneath the splendor, shadows gathered unseen. The omen in the mirror. One night, as the court slept, Merlin walked alone upon the ramparts. The moon hung low, silver and sorrowful. In the mirror of the lake below, he saw a vision, the sword Excalibur, bathed in blood, and beside it, a crown fallen in dust. He turned to Arthur. "Greatness invites ruin, my king," Merlin said. "Beware the day your heart forgets humility, for Camelot will not fall to swords, but to sins." Arthur placed his hand upon the old man's shoulder. "If fate demands a price," he answered, "then I shall pay it gladly, so long as peace endures a while." Merlin bowed, for he knew the boy he had raised was now truly king, and that no prophecy, however dark, could dim the light Arthur carried. The vision of unity in the years that followed. Arthur summoned scholars, priests, and mystics from all lands. He spoke of a vision beyond conquest, a realm of law and compassion, where the sword served justice and not ambition. "Let this be our creed," he declared before the round table, "that strength without mercy is mere tyranny, and wisdom without courage is but cowardice." The knights struck their blades upon the table, crying out in one voice, "Long live the king!" And in that thunder of voices, the world seemed reborn. The shadow of tomorrow, as dawn rose over Camelot, the golden towers shone like fire. Arthur stood beside Guinevere upon the balcony. The land stretched before them, rivers, forests, villages, all bound by the fragile dream they had built together. The queen smiled softly. "You have given the people peace," she said. Arthur looked toward the horizon, where the light met the mist. "For now," he whispered. "But peace, like the sword, must be held with steady hands, and far beyond, in the whispering dark." Unseen eyes watched the eyes of Morgana, half-sister to the king, whose heart had long turned to envy. The age of light had begun, but in every dawn lies the seed of its dusk. Chapter 4. The Lady of the Lake. In the 7th year of Arthur's reign, when the banners of Camelot still shone bright, and the songs of peace filled every hall, a shadow fell across the heart of Britain. A northern warlord, cruel and unbending, rose against the crown, vowing to cast down the young king and drown his dream in fire. Arthur rode forth to meet him, leading his knights through rain and thunder. The two armies clashed on the plain of Camelot, beneath a sky torn by lightning. Spears broke, shields splintered, and men fell like autumn leaves upon the earth. In the chaos, Arthur's sword, the one he had drawn from the stone, shattered against the enemy's blade. Steel met steel, and the weapon that had crowned a king broke in two. Arthur fell to his knees, the fragments of his destiny lying cold in the mud. The northern king raised his axe for the final blow, but before it could fall, the heavens roared. The storm turned upon itself, and a voice older than the wind cried out through the tempest, "Not yet, Pendragon, not yet." The lightning struck, blinding all who stood upon the field. When Arthur awoke, he was alone, the battle lost to mist. The rain had ceased, and before him stretched a forest older than memory. The trees whispered in tongues forgotten by men. He walked, wounded but unafraid, following the murmur of unseen waters until he came to a lake, vast, silver, and still as a mirror of the sky. The air trembled with enchantment. Upon its surface, a hand rose, pale as moonlight, holding aloft a sword whose blade burned with ethereal fire. Its hilt shimmered with gold and blue stones, and upon it were etched runes that only gods might read. Then the water parted, and from its depths emerged the Lady of the Lake, her hair flowing like silver mist, her eyes deep as eternity. Around her, the world bowed in reverence. Arthur knelt, for he felt the weight of something divine. "Who are you?" he whispered. The lady's voice was soft, but it carried the power of tides. "I am Nemu, keeper of the deep, guardian of what was and what shall be. You are the child of prophecy, Arthur Pendragon, son of storm and sorrow." Arthur bowed his head. "My sword is broken, and my kingdom stands upon the edge of ruin." The lady smiled, not with joy, but with pity. "Power is a gift and a curse alike. The sword you seek will make you the mightiest of kings and the loneliest of men." She lifted the blade toward him, and as Arthur took it, he felt a surge of warmth, as though the lake's heart had entered his own. "This is Excalibur," said the lady, "forged in the breath of stars, tempered in the sorrow of the gods. Its edge will never dull, and its bearer will never fall in battle until his heart betrays his honor." Arthur raised Excalibur high. The blade sang, and a beam of light shot through the clouds. The forest bowed. The lady's eyes glimmered like rain on glass. "Remember, my king, every light casts a shadow. When the sword returns to the water, so too shall your time end." Before Arthur could speak, she vanished beneath the surface, leaving only ripples behind. The air grew still once more. He looked upon the sword in his hands. Its reflection wavered like a vision of destiny itself. The return to Camelot. When Arthur returned to Camelot, the people hailed him as if the sun itself had come home. He rode through the gates bearing Excalibur, and its brilliance filled the hall with such radiance that none could look upon it without awe. Merlin met him at the steps of the throne. His eyes, though wise, carried sorrow. "You have been chosen," he said, "not by me nor by men, but by the will that binds the stars. The sword is more than metal, it is covenant. Break it, and it will break you." Arthur nodded. "Then I shall wield it with honor, or not at all." The mage sighed. If only honor were so simple. The whisper of prophecy that night, as the king slept, he dreamed. The lady appeared again, her form woven of mist and moonlight. "You are the shepherd of destiny," she said. "But beware the serpent, born of your own blood, and the fire, kindled by forbidden love. They will come for you, as surely as the dawn follows night." Arthur reached for her hand, but she was already fading. When he awoke, the sword lay beside him, gleaming faintly, as if to remind him that every prophecy begins as a whisper. The sword's power. In the years that followed, Excalibur became both weapon and symbol. Its light turned the tide of every battle. No foe could stand before it. Men said that when Arthur raised it to the sun, angels sang and demons fled. But the king himself began to sense the sword's burden. It seemed to pulse with awareness, as if it knew the cost it would demand. Sometimes, when the moon was full, he could hear faint echoes within the blade, like the sound of distant weeping. Merlin watched, silent and troubled. Every gift, he thought, is a seed of sorrow. The lady's farewell, one twilight, Arthur rode again to the lake, seeking counsel. The waters were calm, but the lady did not appear. Only her voice drifted across the stillness. "Do not call upon me again, son of Pendragon. My part in your tale is done. Guard the sword, and guard your heart, for both will one day betray you." Arthur bowed his head. The return of the King Arthur returned to Camelot, carrying within him both triumph and dread. Excalibur rested at his side, gleaming with the light of destiny and the shadow of doom. The people saw only a golden king with a sword of miracles. But Merlin, from his lonely tower, saw the threads of fate winding ever tighter. "The sword has found its master," he murmured to the wind, "and so too has destiny found its end." As night fell over Camelot, the moon shone upon the blade, and its reflection flickered like a ghost across the walls. The lady's last words echoed in Arthur's heart, a warning, soft as the sigh of water. When Excalibur returns to the lake, the dream of Camelot shall fade. Chapter 5. The Queen and the Knight. In the golden years of Camelot, when the banners of Arthur fluttered proudly across every castle and the land, knew peace for the first time in centuries, there came to the court a knight unlike any other. Sir Lancelot du Lac, son of France, baptized in mystery and trained in the art of both war and grace. They said he had been blessed by the Lady of the Lake herself, as Arthur once had. His sword gleamed with mirrored light, and his eyes carried the silence of distant waters. None could match his valor in battle, nor the purity of his oath to the king. When Arthur first beheld him, he said, "Here stands the truest of knights. Let him be my brother in arms." And so it was. Lancelot became the mightiest champion of Camelot, beloved by the people, honored by all, and trusted by the king himself. Yet fate, ever weaving its silent web, had already written another truth, one that would bleed the heart of Camelot dry. The first glance, Queen Guinevere, daughter of Leodegrance, shone brighter than the dawn. Her voice could calm storms, and her kindness softened even the hardest warriors. Yet beneath her crown lay a heart that yearned for love, unchained by duty. When she first looked upon Lancelot, she saw not the knight, but the man beneath the armor, noble, wounded, and lonely. He bowed before her, eyes lowered. "My queen, I am yours to command, in battle and in peace." And she answered, "Then rise, my champion, for I would not have a man such as you kneel too long." From that moment, their souls began to circle one another, like stars caught in the same orbit, destined to burn, destined to fall. The Garden of Secrets, in the quiet gardens of Camelot, where roses climbed the marble walls, Guinevere often walked at dusk to escape the weight of her crown. It was there that Lancelot would sometimes find her, under the willow tree beside the fountain, where the moonlight kissed the water. They spoke at first of noble things, of battles, of duty, of the Round Table's dream of justice. But words turned softer as the seasons passed. "You love him deeply," Lancelot once said. "I see it in your eyes when he speaks." "Yes," Guinevere whispered, "I love him as one must love the sun, from afar, knowing it burns. And yet," he said, voice trembling, "it is not the sun that haunts your heart." Silence fell between them. Only the sound of the fountain answered, as if the world itself held its breath. That night, under the moon's pale gaze, they shared a single kiss, born not of passion, but of inevitability. And from that kiss, the fall of Camelot began. The oath and the sin. Lancelot tried to flee the fire that consumed him. He rode into distant wars, seeking wounds that might cleanse his soul. But no sword nor prayer could sever the bond forged that night beneath the willow tree. When he returned, thinner and haunted, Arthur embraced him as a brother. "You have served me beyond measure," said the king. "You are the best of us all." Lancelot bowed his head. "If I have served well, it is only by the light of your faith in me." But in his heart, shame and love warred like twin dragons. He could not meet the queen's gaze without feeling the world tilt toward ruin. Guinevere bore her crown like a shackle. Her smile dimmed, her laughter faded. The court sang of love eternal, and she, its queen, could no longer bear the sound. Merlin saw it all. He spoke to Arthur one evening beneath the stars. "My king, even gold may tarnish when touched by mortal longing. You built a kingdom of honor, but remember, hearts are not bound by oaths." Arthur frowned. "You speak in riddles again, old friend." "No riddle," said the mage. "Only a warning whispered too late." The shadow of suspicion rumors began to drift through the court like smoke. The jealous, the envious, and the righteous all whispered the same name. Guinevere. Sir Agravain, cousin to Arthur, brought his doubts before the king. "Sire, your queen's eyes wander where they should not. Lancelot walks too often in the moonlight, and never alone." Arthur's face darkened. "Enough. I trust both with my life." But when the night grew quiet, and the halls of Camelot lay still, doubt gnawed at his soul. The next day, he called Lancelot to him. "Tell me, my friend, if love can ever betray honor." Lancelot paused, for he knew the question was not about love, but about him. Only when honor forgets that love is what made it pure. Arthur turned away, his heart heavy with a truth he refused to name. The burning of love one spring night, a storm broke over Camelot. Thunder rolled like war drums, and rain lashed the windows. In the queen's chamber, Guinevere knelt by the fire, her tears lost to the sound of rain. Lancelot entered without armor, without pretense. "I cannot live between sin and silence," he said. "If love is wrong, let me die with it upon my lips." Guinevere rose, her gown shining like moonlit silk. "Then we shall both die," she whispered, and fell into his arms. Outside, the thunder roared like the laughter of gods. And from that night forward, the garden of Camelot was forever tainted by the scent of forbidden roses, the weight of the crown. At dawn, Lancelot stood by the window, the queen asleep behind him. He looked upon the awakening kingdom and felt the full weight of what he had done. "I would give my soul," he murmured, "to undo this love, yet I would die to feel it again." He turned toward the door, ready to flee once more, but a shadow moved in the corridor, Agravain, watching. The first whisper became truth. The first truth became judgment. The whisper before the fall, Merlin left Camelot soon after. When asked why, he said only, "The storm has already begun. The king does not yet hear the thunder." And somewhere in the garden, the roses bloomed redder than ever, as if the earth itself drank from the blood of love and prophecy alike. Chapter 6: The Quest for the Holy Grail in the 12th year of Arthur's reign. When the towers of Camelot still gleamed beneath heaven's light, and the land seemed blessed beyond mortal measure, the king began to dream of shadows. Each night, a vision came, a chalice of light drifting through endless dark, and a voice calling his name across the void. Arthur Pendragon, the crown of kings, the burden of faith. He would awaken before dawn, heart heavy, staring upon the sword Excalibur as if seeking an answer. For though he had built a kingdom of justice, he felt the growing silence of God, as if heaven itself had turned its gaze elsewhere. The vision in the hall, one midsummer eve, as Arthur sat among his knights, a sudden storm fell upon Camelot. Thunder cracked, torches died, and through the shattered light of lightning appeared a beam of pure radiance, descending upon the round table. Within that light floated a cup of impossible beauty, woven of crystal and flame, and though none could touch it, all felt its presence pierce their souls. The knights fell to their knees. Galahad, pure of heart, wept openly. "It is the Holy Grail," whispered Merlin from the shadows. the cup of Christ, lost 2 men, found only by those whose souls are flawless. The vision lingered for but a breath, then vanished into the storm. Silence hung over the hall until Arthur rose. "My brothers," he said, "we have seen the face of grace. Yet I, who am called king, could not approach it." He turned his gaze to the window, where rain struck like tears. "If heaven still has mercy, let the Grail be found, not for glory, but for the redemption of our hearts." The departure of the knights at dawn. The knights gathered before the gates of Camelot. One by one, they pledged to seek the Grail, to ride until they found either divine light or death. Arthur stood before them, his cloak whipping in the wind. "Go," he said, "but know this, the Grail is not a prize, but a mirror. It will show you not heaven's face, but your own soul." Galahad bowed low. "Then may I be worthy of both." And with that, the company departed. Lancelot, Gawain, Percival, Bors, Galahad, and many others, their banners vanishing into the mist. The sound of their hooves faded like the heartbeat of Camelot itself. When the gates closed, the city felt empty, as if the spirit of the kingdom had ridden away with them. The king's solitude for the first time, Arthur was alone. The round table stood silent, its chairs, once filled with laughter, songs, and oaths of brotherhood, now waited like ghosts. Each morning, the king rode to the chapel and knelt before the altar, seeking peace. But the silence of God grew heavier. Merlin came to him one night, his robe gray with age. "Why do you grieve, my king?" "Because," Arthur said, "I have built a kingdom for men to believe in, and yet it is belief that I have lost." "Faith," replied the mage, "is not found in visions or relics. It is found in the heart that still seeks, even when all else is dark." Arthur looked to the window, where Excalibur caught the moonlight. "Then perhaps my heart has grown too heavy for seeking." Merlin laid a hand upon his shoulder. "Then you must learn to let others seek for you. Even a king cannot hold both sword and grail." The years of waiting seasons passed. One by one, riders returned, broken, weary, and empty-handed. Some had gone mad, others had died chasing illusions. Gawain spoke of deserts where angels turned to dust. Percival told of a bridge made of light that vanished beneath his feet, and Lancelot returned last, his armor tarnished, his eyes hollow. Arthur met him in the great hall. "Did you see it, my friend?" Lancelot lowered his head. "I saw it, and it turned from me. I am not pure enough." The king's heart sank. "Nor am I," he whispered. That night, he dreamed once more of the Grail, now distant, dim, and veiled in mist. And the voice that had once called his name now wept. The return of Galahad, one winter dawn. A rider approached Sir Galahad, radiant and calm, though his body seemed half of this world, half of the next. Arthur rose from his throne. "You found it," Galahad smiled faintly. "Aye, my king. The Grail was found not in glory, but in surrender. I beheld it, and I drank from it. My soul was filled with peace beyond all knowing, and now I must leave this world." Arthur stepped forward, voice breaking. "Tell me, Galahad, did you see the face of God?" The knight's eyes shone like dawn. "No, my lord. I saw your dream, Camelot, reflected in his light. It was beautiful, and it was fading." He knelt before the king. "You built a realm of justice, Arthur Pendragon. You gave men hope that they could be better. That is the true Grail." Then Galahad closed his eyes, and his body shimmered into light, a single beam rising to the heavens. The king's lament. Arthur fell to his knees, the hall echoing with the sound of his grief. "Why," he cried, "must every miracle end in loss?" From the shadows, Merlin's voice replied softly, "Because, my king, you are mortal, and all mortal dreams must bleed before they become legend." Arthur rose slowly, walking to the round table. He placed his hand upon the seat once meant for the Grail's finder, now empty, save for a faint glow. "Then let this be the lesson of Camelot," he said, "that even in failure, faith endures." The fading of the light in the days that followed, the king spoke little. The songs of victory grew quiet. The feasts ended. A mist began to linger over Camelot, gentle but unyielding. Arthur stood upon the balcony, looking toward the horizon where his knights had once ridden. Excalibur hung at his side, heavy as the burden of hope. "The Grail was not meant for me," he whispered. "My fate is to rule, not to be redeemed." And somewhere far beyond the mortal realm, the Lady of the Lake watched her voice drifting upon the wind. "Not yet, Pendragon. Your trial is not the Grail, but the heart that still beats when all others have failed." Arthur turned from the fading sun, and for the first time, the Golden King of Camelot looked truly old. Chapter 7: The Fall of Lancelot. The years after the quest for the Grail were quiet, too quiet. Camelot stood still, like a golden statue, untouched by time. But within its shining walls, the heart of its king began to wither. Arthur, once the dreamer who united Britain, had grown weary. He had seen the Grail slip from his grasp, watched his knights scatter and fall, and now the silence of his once glorious court haunted him more than any battle ever had. He walked the halls at dusk, listening to the echo of his own footsteps, and wondered if the gods had turned their faces from him. Yet, among those echoes, one name still brought warmth to his heart: Lancelot, his truest knight, the man he called brother. If there remained one bond that could preserve the soul of Camelot, Arthur believed it was theirs. But destiny, cruel and patient, had been waiting. The stirring of shadows, it began as whispers, soft, poisonous, and familiar. In the corners of the great hall, in the murmurs of lesser knights, in the jealous hearts of men who mistook virtue for favor. The queen grows pale when the king departs. Lancelot's eyes follow her like a shadow. Arthur ignored it at first. His heart was too noble, his faith too steadfast. He had seen envy destroy many kingdoms. He would not let it touch his own. But one night, as he stood upon the balcony, he saw them in the garden below, Guinevere and Lancelot, standing close, speaking softly beneath the silver willow. He could not hear their words, but he saw the way their hands trembled when they parted. And though no sword was drawn, Arthur felt the wound pierce clean through his armor. He turned away from the sight, whispering to the cold air, "They are human, and I am only a king." The council of Merlin. The next morning, Arthur sought Merlin in his tower, where the old mage now lived apart from courtly noise. "Tell me, old friend," said the king, "can a man love truly and still be righteous?" Merlin studied him, eyes ancient and tired. "No man is without sin, Arthur, not even a king, but the sin that destroys is not love, it is silence. Speak before silence turns to shadow." Arthur bowed his head. "If I speak, I destroy all I have built. And if you remain silent," said Merlin, "you will destroy yourself." But Arthur did not answer. His heart, once filled with fire, now felt like a throne of ash. The trial of the queen. The whispers grew louder, fed by envy and righteousness alike. Sir Agravain and Sir Mordred, men of cold ambition, brought their accusations before the round table. "Our king is blind," they said. "His queen lies in the arms of his knight. Shall Camelot be ruled by betrayal?" Arthur rose slowly from his throne. His eyes burned with sorrow, not anger. "You speak of treason in the name of truth. Beware, for truth can wound deeper than lies." But they pressed on, demanding proof, demanding justice. And in that moment, the king realized justice and mercy could not share the same crown. That night, he prayed alone before Excalibur. "Lord, I have fought monsters and kings and never feared death. But how does one fight the heart?" The sword gleamed faintly, as if in answer, but its light brought no comfort. The betrayal unveiled Mordred and Agravain laid their trap. They broke into the queen's chamber by night, and there found Lancelot with Guinevere, not as lovers, but as two souls bound by sorrow, seeking solace in silence. Yet to the world it was enough. Steel flashed, knights fell. Lancelot fought his way free, leaving the chambers drenched in blood. The queen was taken, accused of adultery and treason. When word reached Arthur, he fell to his knees, not in rage, but in grief. "Gods forgive me," he whispered, "for I have made of love a battlefield." He rose, his face pale as winter. "The law is the law. The queen shall face the trial of fire." Merlin tried to stop him. "You condemn not only her, but yourself." Arthur's voice trembled. "Then let the flames judge us all. The fire and the sword." The day of the trial dawned gray and windless. The pyre stood before the gates of Camelot, surrounded by soldiers who dared not meet their king's eyes. Guinevere was brought forth in white, her hair loose, her face calm. She did not plead, she did not weep. Arthur stood beside the pyre, Excalibur at his side, the same sword that had united Britain, now guarding the fire that would consume its queen. When the torch was raised, a cry rose from the crowd, not of hate, but of heartbreak. And before the flame could touch her, a thunder of hooves shattered the silence. Lancelot came, clad in blood and dust, his sword blazing. He cut through the guards, through the fire, through destiny itself. He took Guinevere in his arms and fled into the wild. Arthur did not move. He watched them go, his face carved in stone. Only when the smoke cleared did he whisper, "Then it is done. The heart of Camelot has broken." The king alone, the council, demanded vengeance. The land demanded order. Arthur rode no longer as a hero, but as a judge. He led his army against Lancelot, not in wrath, but in duty. Every night by the campfire, he stared into the flame and saw not his enemy, but his reflection. Merlin appeared to him once more, thin as a ghost. "You cannot kill him, Arthur, for in slaying Lancelot, you slay what remains of your own heart." Arthur looked away, then let it die. A king must serve the realm, not his sorrow. The twilight of brotherhood, when the armies met, the heavens themselves seemed to mourn. Rain fell like tears upon both banners, the Lion of Camelot and the Dove of Lancelot. Arthur rode to the front lines, his armor dull with dust. Across the field, Lancelot bowed his head. "My king," he shouted through the storm, "forgive me." Arthur raised Excalibur high. "I forgive you, my friend, but forgiveness cannot mend what destiny has broken." They charged. The clash of their blades echoed like thunder over a dying age. Neither sought victory, only release. And when at last Lancelot disarmed his king, he dropped to his knees, cast down his sword, and fled into exile. Arthur stood amid the rain, watching his brother vanish into mist. "He is gone," said the king, "and with him the last of my joy, the hollow throne." Camelot was silent when Arthur returned. Guinevere had taken refuge in a convent. Merlin had vanished beyond the veil. The round table stood empty, its circle broken. The king walked through the deserted hall and laid Excalibur upon the table. "All I have built has turned to sorrow, yet still I am the king. I must endure." He sat upon the throne, not as a ruler, but as a man burdened by his own legend, a figure carved in light and shadow, destined to outlive all he loved. Outside, thunder rolled once more. The storm had not ended, it had only moved closer. Chapter 8. The Betrayal of Mordred, the storm that had begun with Lancelot's fall did not end, it merely changed its voice. Where once it whispered of sorrow, now it howled of ruin. Camelot had lost its light. Guinevere had vanished into the quiet walls of a convent, Lancelot into exile, and Merlin into the mists of prophecy. Only Arthur remained, a king surrounded by ghosts. Each dawn, he climbed the battlements of his castle and gazed upon the gray horizon, where thunder gathered like an army. He did not yet know that the storm was not coming for him. It was already within his house, the son of shadows. Years ago, before the sword and the crown, Arthur had lain with a woman shrouded in enchantment, Morgoth's sister to Morgana, both daughters of the dark blood of Avalon. From that union, half forgotten and unspoken, came a child born beneath an eclipse, Mordred. He was raised in silence, hidden in the cold corners of Orkney, taught not love but ambition. Morgoth whispered to him of his father, not as hero, but as thief. "Arthur stole your birthright," she hissed. "He cast you away to wear his shining crown. Take it back, my son. Take what is yours." So Mordred grew, not in innocence, but in envy. When he finally came to Camelot, he bowed before Arthur with the grace of a knight, but his smile was a serpent's coil, the return of the lost son. Arthur saw in him something familiar, the same fire that had once burned in his own youth. "Rise, Mordred," said the king. "If you have my blood, then let it bind us, not divide us." For a time, it seemed peace had returned. Mordred served loyally, brave and brilliant, winning the trust of the court. He was bold in council, fierce in battle, and yet behind his eyes flickered a hunger no glory could quench. He would walk the empty halls of Camelot at night, staring up at the great banners, the lion, the dragon, the cross, and whisper, "All this will be mine." The prophecy of Morgana. One night, as lightning split the sky, Mordred sought the counsel of his aunt, the witch Morgana, who dwelt beyond the veil of Avalon. He found her amid mist and moonlight, her eyes twin flames in the dark. "Aunt," he said, "tell me my fate." She smiled, sorrow and pride mingling in her gaze. "You are both the child and the curse of Camelot. You will tear down what your father built, and by your hand the age of heroes shall end." Mordred's jaw tightened. "Then I am doomed." "No," said Morgana, "only he is doomed. You are destiny's blade." When he left her tower, the wind itself seemed to whisper his name. Mordred. Mordred, heir of the shadowed crown. The seeds of treason in the halls of Camelot. Mordred's charm bloomed like a poisonous flower. He spoke softly to the discontented, to those who had lost faith in Arthur's weary rule. "Our king is old," he said. "He speaks of peace while the north burns. He dreams of past glories while our enemies gather. He gathered knights, not by loyalty, but by fear and pride. And when Arthur, in an act of mercy, declared a truce with Lancelot, allowing the exiled knight to live out his days in peace, Mordred's voice rose like thunder. Peace with a traitor. Then justice has died in Camelot. Many cheered him. Few dared defy him. Arthur watched from his throne, his eyes filled with sorrow. He had seen betrayal before, but never one that looked so much like himself. The crown divided. The moment of reckoning came when Arthur, weary of endless conflict, sailed north to suppress a rebellion beyond Hadrian's wall. He left Mordred to rule in his stead, trusting him as both son and steward. But trust, once placed in shadow, is but the prelude to ruin. No sooner had Arthur's ship vanished beyond the mist than Mordred seized the throne. He declared the king dead, the throne vacant, and himself the rightful heir by blood and prophecy. He summoned the nobles, forged alliances through fear and false promise, and even sought to claim Guinevere, now returned from her convent, as his queen. You were his, Mordred said coldly, and he is gone. Camelot must not be without a queen. But Guinevere fled the court, locking herself within the Tower of London, praying that the true king would return. The king's return when word reached Arthur of his son's betrayal. He stood silent upon the deck of his ship, rain falling like tears upon his armor. So he whispered, "It is my own blood that has risen against me. The circle is complete." Sir Bedivere, ever loyal, said, "Command us, my king, and we shall cleanse the land of this treachery." Arthur's gaze turned toward the dark shore of Britain. "No," he said softly, "I shall not cleanse it. I shall redeem it, or die in the attempt." The drums of war began to thunder once more. The last council, before the final march, Arthur gathered what remained of his round table. Many chairs were empty, many banners torn. He spoke not as king, but as a man who knew his end was near. "Brothers, the dream of Camelot is dying, not by sword or spell, but by the hearts of men. Yet we shall not fade in shame. We ride for honor, for the light that once was." Sir Bedivere bowed. "Even in ruin, you are our king." Arthur smiled faintly. "Then let us ride, not to victory, but to remembrance." They rode beneath storm clouds toward Camlann, where destiny waited. The eve of battle that night, Arthur camped beside a dark lake. The wind moaned through the reeds like the ghosts of fallen knights. He dreamed of Merlin, standing upon the shores of Avalon. "The time has come," said the wizard's voice. "You have fought the world. Now you must fight yourself." Arthur awoke before dawn. The stars had gone out, leaving only the cold gray of prophecy. He mounted his horse, Excalibur gleaming faintly at his side. In the distance, Mordred's army burned torches against the horizon, a sea of fire born from his own shadow. The father and the son, as dawn broke, the two armies faced one another, father and son, king and heir, light and darkness. Arthur rode forward beneath a tattered banner. "Mordred," he called, "my blood calls to you. Lay down your sword. End this madness." Mordred laughed, his eyes burning with fury and grief. "You speak of peace, but you stole my birthright. You speak of love, but you cast me away. I am what you made me, father." Arthur's voice trembled. "Then let us end what I began." The trumpets sounded. Steel met steel, and the prophecy of Britain began its final verse. Chapter 9. The Battle of Camlann. The dawn of Camelot came shrouded in mist, a silence so heavy it felt like the gods themselves held their breath. No birds sang, no wind stirred the banners, only the distant clang of armor and the muted whisper of men preparing for death. King Arthur stood upon a hill overlooking the field. Below him, two armies faced one another, one bearing the Lion of Camelot, the other the Black Serpent of Mordred. The air trembled between them, thick with prophecy and grief. Arthur's armor gleamed faintly in the pale light, though age and sorrow had dimmed its shine. Beside him stood Sir Bedivere, his last true companion. "The hour is come, my king," Bedivere murmured. Arthur nodded slowly. "Aye, the hour the bards will sing of not for glory, but for ending." He looked toward the enemy lines. Somewhere beyond that sea of steel stood Mordred, his blood, his curse, his mirror. The omen before battle. Arthur summoned his captains. They gathered around him, grim, hollow-eyed men who had seen too much of war. "Hear me," said the king. "Let none raise sword unless the foe strikes first. This field is cursed by prophecy, and one spark may light the fire that consumes us all." They swore to obey. Yet fate had already unsheathed its blade. As the two hosts stood in uneasy truce, a serpent slithered from the grass. A soldier cried out and struck at it with his sword, and that single flash of steel shattered the fragile peace. From both sides erupted the roar of men betrayed by destiny, and thus began the Battle of Camlann. The storm of steel, the first charge, hit like thunder. Spears splintered, horses screamed. The earth shook with the trampling of 1,000 hooves. Arthur rode at the forefront, Excalibur blazing like a shard of sunlight through the storm. Each swing of the sacred blade carved through shadow and despair. For Camelot cried his knights, for the king. Blood and rain mingled into mud beneath their feet. The field became a sea of red armor, glinting, banners torn, prayers drowned beneath the clash of iron. Arthur fought not as a mortal man, but as something half divine, the spirit of Britain itself, refusing to yield to darkness. Yet for every foe he struck down, another rose. The enemy was endless, and the faces of the fallen blurred together, friends and traitors alike. The eye of the storm, by midday, the field was a wasteland. Smoke and fog coiled over heaps of the dead. Arthur dismounted, armor cracked and bleeding from a dozen wounds. He moved through the carnage like a specter, calling for his son, Mordred. His voice echoed through the mist. "Show yourself. Let the curse end with us." And from the haze came an answer, cold, clear, venomous. "I am here, Father." Mordred emerged, his black armor glistening with rain and blood, his eyes burning like dying stars. In his hand, he held a blade said to be forged in Avalon's shadow, Clarent, the twin of Excalibur, meant for peace, but twisted now for vengeance. "You come at last," said Arthur. "I come for what was denied," replied Mordred. "A crown, a name, a father." Arthur raised his sword. "You come for your own destruction." The duel of blood, the two charged, king and son, light and shadow. When their blades met, the heavens screamed. Excalibur clashed against Clarent in sparks of fire and fury. Every strike echoed like the tolling of the world's last bell. Mordred fought with the rage of youth, swift and merciless. Arthur countered with the weight of sorrow. Every blow a prayer, every parry a plea for redemption. "You were not meant for this," Arthur gasped. "Then why was I born?" Mordred roared. Steel met flesh, blood stained both their blades. The ground drank deeply of their kinship and their hate. They broke apart, gasping, the world seemed to hold still. "You are strong," said Arthur, trembling, "too strong. You could have been my heir, and you," Mordred spat, "could have been my father." With a cry that tore the sky itself, Mordred lunged his sword, driving deep into Arthur's side. The fall of the King Pain exploded through Arthur's body, but still he stood. Summoning the last of his strength, he grasped Excalibur with both hands and drove it into Mordred's chest. The two blades pierced together, father and son locked in eternal embrace, each wound feeding the other. Mordred's eyes widened. For a moment, the fury faded, replaced by something almost human, sorrow, perhaps, or understanding. "Father, ... double quotes, he whispered. "My son, ... and then both fell. The field grew silent. Rain began to fall again, washing blood from the grass, as if the heavens wept for them both. The aftermath hours passed before Sir Bedivere found his king. Arthur lay beneath a broken banner, his armor shattered, Excalibur lying beside him. "My king," Bedivere whispered, falling to his knees. "The battle is won, but all is lost." Arthur's lips curved in a faint, weary smile. "Then perhaps we have done enough." He looked toward the gray horizon, where the mist of Avalon seemed to shimmer just beyond sight. "Bedivere," he said weakly, "take Excalibur. Cast it into the lake where it was born." Bedivere hesitated. "My lord, the sword is holy. Do as I command. The age of kings is ended. The sword's farewell." Reluctantly, Bedivere carried the blade to the lake. He held it high one last time, watching the runes along its edge glow faintly, as though alive. Then, with a cry, he hurled it into the water. For a moment, all was still. Then from the depths rose a hand, pale, robed in silver mist, catching the sword by the hilt before sinking back beneath the waves. When Bedivere returned, Arthur smiled faintly. "It is done," he whispered. "The sword returns to the lady, the king to the earth." His eyes closed. Thunder rolled across the sky like a final drumbeat, the passing of the king. As darkness fell, a boat appeared upon the lake, cloaked in mist, guided by unseen hands. 3 figures stood aboard, their faces veiled. Bedivere lifted the dying king into the vessel. Arthur's voice, faint as wind, murmured, "Weep not, good night, for I go to Avalon, the Isle of Healing, where the wounds of kings are mended." The boat drifted into the mist. Lightning flashed, then silence. And when dawn came, the lake was empty. Only the ripples remained, and the whisper of prophecy. "Here lies Arthur, the once and future king." Chapter 10. The journey to Avalon, the field of Camlann, lay silent. Smoke curled from broken standards, and the crows of the highlands circled above in solemn hunger. The age of kings had ended in blood. Upon that desolate ground, Sir Bedivere knelt beside his fallen lord. Arthur's breath came faint and shallow, the color of his face as pale as moonlight. The sound of distant thunder still echoed, but the battle was long over. There was no victory, no defeat, only the quiet end of all things. "My king," whispered Bedivere, "the world has lost its heart." Arthur's eyes opened slowly. In them burned a faint glow, like dying embers refusing to fade. "Not lost," he murmured, "only waiting to be reborn." The veiled shore. Night fell like a shroud upon the land. The air grew still, and mist began to rise, thick and silver, curling through the ruins like ghostly fingers. Bedivere lifted the wounded king upon his shoulders and carried him down the valley, guided by a whisper he could not name. The path wound through forests, burned and broken, until it reached the edge of a dark and silent lake. The moon hung low, its reflection trembling upon the water, and upon that mirror of night floated a single boat, black as onyx, rimmed in silver light. "The lake," Arthur breathed, his voice distant, as though half dreaming. "She calls me home." As Bedivere laid him within the vessel, the air shimmered. From the mist stepped 3 maidens, robed in white, their faces veiled, their voices soft as the tide. "Who comes to Avalon?" they sang. "Arthur, son of Uther," Bedivere answered, "the wounded king." The maidens bowed their heads. "Then the hour has come." The lady of the lake, the boat drifted soundlessly from the shore, moved by no sail, no wind. Bedivere watched helplessly as it glided into the heart of the mist. Arthur turned his gaze toward the fading world behind him. The burning fields of Camlann vanished into fog, swallowed by silence. Then, from the depths of the lake, rose a figure clothed in silver, the lady of the lake. Her eyes were ancient, her voice the song of water itself. "King Arthur," she said, "your task in the mortal realm is ended. Yet the dream you birthed shall not perish." Arthur tried to rise, but faltered. "My dream lies in ashes. Dreams never die," she whispered. "They sleep, waiting for the dawn." She touched his brow, and the pain faded. The blood upon his wounds shimmered and vanished like dew. "Rest now," said the lady, "for you are more than flesh, you are legend." The crossing the mist thickened until there was no sky, no horizon, only silver light and silence. Arthur lay upon the deck, watching strange stars glimmer above, stars not born of this world. He felt no fear, only a vast calm, as though the weight of crown and sorrow had been lifted at last. "Where are we going?" he asked softly. "To Avalon," said one of the maidens, "the isle beyond time, where no wound bleeds and no crown binds." The boat glided through an endless sea of clouds. Shadows of long-forgotten kings seemed to walk upon the waves, men of the old world, watching their brother pass. Arthur felt their gaze upon him, and for the first time, he understood. He was not merely leaving the world, he was becoming part of its memory. The isle beyond time, the mist broke. Before him rose an island bathed in eternal twilight, Avalon. Its shores glowed with golden reeds. Its air shimmered with the scent of apple blossoms that never faded. Crystal towers rose from green hills, their peaks crowned with stars. Upon the shore stood Merlin, robed in white, staff in hand. He smiled as the boat approached. "Welcome, my king," said the old mage. "The circle is complete." Arthur tried to speak, but tears filled his eyes. "Merlin, ... I have failed them all." "No," Merlin said gently, "you have fulfilled the prophecy. For even the greatest kings must fall, so that the age of man may rise." The maidens lifted Arthur from the boat and laid him upon a bed of silver and crystal. Around him the air shimmered with quiet music, the song of Avalon itself. "Sleep, Arthur," Merlin said. "Sleep until Britain's heart calls for her king once more." The dreaming king time flowed differently upon the isle. There was no night or day, no decay or age, only the steady pulse of eternity. Arthur lay upon his bier, neither dead nor alive, his face serene. Excalibur returned from the lake, rested beside him, its blade still faintly glowing. The maidens kept eternal vigil, singing softly to the sleeping king. And sometimes, in the stillness, his lips would move, whispering the names of those he had loved and lost: Guinevere, Lancelot, ... Bedivere, Merlin stood watch from afar, knowing that beyond the veil of time, the world of men would forget, then remember, then forget again. But the legend of Arthur would endure. The prophecy of return years became centuries. Empires rose and crumbled. The names of kings faded, but one name endured. Arthur. Sailors swore they saw a golden light beneath the waves of the western sea. Poets dreamed of a slumbering king beneath a hollow hill, his sword still in hand. And when the world grew dark, people whispered, one day, when Britain's heart is in peril, the king will return from Avalon. In that promise, Arthur lived not as man, but as hope, the dream of a just ruler, of a world bound by honor and mercy, slept within the soul of every generation. The eternal flame, deep within Avalon, the Lady of the Lake looked upon the sleeping king. A single tear fell from her eye, turning to a star as it touched the ground. Rest well, Arthur Pendragon, she said, for even kings must dream before they rise again. And so he slept, the once and future king, upon his bed of silver, beneath skies that never faded. His sword by his side, his crown set aside, his heart still beating faintly with the rhythm of the world. Above him, the stars of Avalon shimmered brighter than ever, and somewhere, far beyond the edge of mortal time, the wind whispered his name, Arthur, the king who shall return. Chapter 11. The legend endures. The mists of Avalon never lifted. They rolled endlessly across the sleeping isle, veiling the silver halls and the slumbering king within. Yet, beyond that sacred realm, in the mortal world, time surged on like an untamed sea. Empires rose and fell, languages changed, and still the name Arthur Pendragon refused to fade. The first whisper of memory. It began with whispers among the dying embers of the old world. In ruined monasteries, monks spoke of a king who had once ruled with justice so pure that even the heavens bent in reverence. They told tales by candlelight of a sword that shone brighter than truth, of knights who swore oaths stronger than iron, and of a kingdom called Camelot, where honor had once been the law of men. Old songs carried his name across the hills of Britain. Travelers recited the verses as they walked, the story of the boy who drew the sword, the king who united the realm, the hero who fell yet promised to return. To the weary and the broken, Arthur became more than a memory. He became hope. Someday, they said, when the world again falls to darkness, the king will ride forth from Avalon. And thus, legend took root in the soil of faith. The echo of Camelot centuries passed, but Camelot endured in dream. Though no man could find its ruins, poets and dreamers claimed to see its reflection in the still waters of dawn. They wrote of shining towers, of Guinevere's golden hair, of Lancelot's sorrow, of the Round Table's unbroken circle. And always, in the center of every tale, there was Arthur, not as a mere man, but as an ideal. The world changed. Kings turned to tyrants. Empires drowned in greed. But the image of Arthur's just rule remained like a flame that refused to die. Children heard the stories and dreamed of a better realm, a land where truth guided the sword, where loyalty was sacred, and where the crown served the people. Camelot is not a place, the old storytellers would say. It is a dream that lives within those who remember the forging of myth in time. Arthur's name spread far beyond Britain's misty shores. Sailors carried the tale across oceans. Kings in distant lands claimed descent from his bloodline. Painters adorned his likeness in glass and gold. Poets sang his deeds as though he were a god among men. The Lady of the Lake became a spirit of all waters. Merlin became the symbol of wisdom itself. And Excalibur, once a weapon, became the eternal sign of divine right and sacrifice. Each generation reshaped the myth anew. The bards of Wales, the chroniclers of France, the dreamers of the modern world, all breathed new life into his story. And so, King Arthur never truly died. He simply changed form, living through every word, every song, every dream that bore his name. The forgotten king, yet not all remembered kindly. As centuries turned to millennia, the world grew louder, colder, filled with the hum of steel and the roar of machines. The songs faded, the nights were forgotten, and the dream of Camelot seemed to vanish beneath the smoke of cities. But in quiet corners of the earth, in old forests, by lonely lakes, beneath ruined abbeys, his presence lingered. Sometimes a traveler wandering through the fog would glimpse a flicker of gold, hear the faint clang of armor, or feel a warmth in their chest, as though an unseen king still watched over the land. The king sleeps, the wind would whisper, but he dreams of return, the return in spirit. 1,000 years passed. No trumpet sounded, no sword rose from the lake. Yet in times of war, when men's hearts faltered, voices still cried his name: Arthur, Camelot, honor and light. His legend returned in the courage of soldiers, in the mercy of rulers, in the hearts of those who stood against darkness. Every act of justice, every vow of love, every word of truth, these were his rebirths. For Arthur's true immortality was not in flesh, but in the ideals he left behind. He became the soul of courage that stirs when one stands alone. He became the whisper that reminds a king of mercy. He became the silent strength of those who refuse to bow before tyranny. Thus, the once and future king still ruled, not from a throne, but from within the hearts of humankind. The circle never broken. On Avalon, time does not flow. The king still rests upon his silver bed, Excalibur by his side. Yet beyond the mist, his dream continues to unfold. Merlin walks the shores, watching the stars reflected on the water. He knows the prophecy endures when the heart of Britain calls, when the shadow rises once more, Arthur shall awaken. And so the circle remains unbroken. Camelot may fall, kingdoms may crumble, but the dream of a noble realm can never truly die, because Arthur is not gone. He is waiting, waiting in the mist, waiting in the song, waiting in the hearts of those who still believe that the world can be just, that honor can endure, and that light will always rise again. The eternal dream. At dawn, the first light touches Avalon's silver towers. For a moment, his fingers twitch, as if grasping for a sword that still burns with destiny. A faint smile passes his lips. Somewhere, far beyond the veil of time, a new dawn breaks over Britain. And in that moment, every whisper of legend, every echo of hope, every dream of a better world becomes one voice. Long live the once and future king. And thus, the legend endures, not as story, nor as memory, but as eternal truth, that within every age there shall rise one who bears the spirit of Arthur, to remind the world what it means to be noble and what it means to be human. Chapter 12. The once and future king. The mists of Avalon drifted like breath upon the sleeping sea. 1,000 years had passed since the Battle of Camlann, and still the island floated between worlds, untouched by time, untouched by death. There, beneath the silver boughs and endless twilight, Arthur Pendragon slept upon his crystal bed. Beside him, Excalibur shimmered faintly, its blade humming like a distant star. All was still, all was eternal, until the world cried out once more. The shadow upon the world in the realm of mortals, the age of machines, had risen. Cities burned beneath towers of glass. Kings had become merchants, and knights had become shadows. The old songs were forgotten, buried beneath noise and smoke. War swept across nations once more, and the hearts of men grew cold. Truth became a tool. Honor became a myth. And in the silence between bombs and prayers, the world wept. It was in that weeping that the veil began to tremble. The winds over the western sea whispered a forgotten name. The waters stirred, and the mists of Avalon began to move. "The hour has come," murmured the Lady of the Lake, rising from the waters of memory. "The world has lost its heart again. The king must awaken." The awakening deep beneath the apple trees of Avalon, the sleeping king stirred. His breath came once, then again. A faint light burned behind his closed eyes, the same fire that had once united kingdoms. Merlin stood beside him, older than time itself, his staff glowing with runes that pulsed like the heartbeat of the earth. "Rise, Pendragon," the old mage said. "Your dream calls for you." Arthur's eyes opened, and in them was the reflection of every dawn the world had ever known. He rose slowly, the weight of ages falling from his shoulders like mist. "Is the world still worthy?" he asked. "Not yet," Merlin replied, "but it still remembers." Arthur looked toward the horizon, where the mist began to part, revealing the shadow of distant lands, broken, bleeding, but still alive. "Then I will go," he said, "for Camelot must live again, if not in stone, then in the hearts of men." The sword of memory Arthur reached for Excalibur. The sword that had once sung with the fire of creation glowed again, bright as the morning star. The Lady of the Lake approached, her voice soft as the tide. "This blade no longer belongs to kings, but to the world itself," she said. "Wield it not as a weapon, but as a light." Arthur bowed his head. "A light shall I bear," he vowed, "until the last shadow fades." As he lifted the sword, the island trembled. The mists swirled and opened, and for the first time in 1,000 years, Avalon revealed its gates to the world. The air was filled with song, the same song that had once been heard in Camelot's golden halls. Merlin smiled faintly. "Go forth, my king," he said, "not as ruler, but as memory, not as flesh, but as spirit, for you are no longer bound to time." The return, and so the king walked into the dawn. He did not step upon water, nor upon land, but upon the very breath of the world. He walked through centuries, unseen yet felt, through the cries of children born into war, through the courage of those who stood against tyranny, through every hand that lifted another from despair. Wherever light returned, Arthur's spirit walked beside it. Sailors swore they saw a man in golden armor upon the cliffs of Tintagel. A nurse in a bombed city dreamt of a figure who laid his hand upon the wounded and said, "Courage, child, Camelot never dies." And poets, hearing the wind over the moors, wept, for in that whisper was his name, Arthur, ... the once and future king, the new Camelot. The world changed again. Wars ceased, and nations rose from ashes. New leaders spoke not of conquest, but of unity. They built halls, not of stone, but of law and compassion. And though none named it so, the world began to rebuild Camelot, not as a fortress, but as a promise. The Round Table lived again, in every council where all were heard, in every act where truth was placed above power. And in quiet moments, when the sun rose over misty hills, those who dreamed deeply enough could still hear faintly the song of Avalon, a melody woven from hope and remembrance. The eternal king upon the shore of Avalon, Merlin watched the horizon. The mists glowed gold with dawnlight. Behind him, the crystal bed was empty. He smiled, knowing the circle was complete. "He has returned," the wizard whispered. "Not as man, but as spirit. Not to rule, but to remind." The Lady of the Lake raised her hand, and from her palm rose a single petal of silver light. It drifted into the sky and became a star, the star of Arthur, shining above the western sea. And so, it is said, when that star burns brightest, it means the king walks again. In the hearts of those who choose courage over fear, mercy over cruelty, truth over silence, the circle reborn time will turn again. Empires will fall again. And still, somewhere beyond the veil, the king shall wait. For Arthur is not gone. He is the wind through the heather, the fire in the forge, the dream that stirs in the hearts of the just. When the world forgets kindness, he will rise. When the world forgets honor, he will speak. When the world forgets hope, he will return. "I am Arthur Pendragon," he once said. "I was born from the dream of men, and while men still dream, I shall never die." And in the dawn of every new age, when the mists roll over the western sea, the voice of the once and future king echoes once more, "Camelot lives."